The first 3 weeks after the twins were born felt like living in a dream Davina kept expecting to shatter. She'd wake at dawn to feed baby Minseo, the girl who had her father's elegant features softened by Davina's warm coloring, and find Joon-woo already awake with baby Jiho, walking the nursery floor, whispering promises in Korean that made her chest ache. The man who'd destroyed her was learning to change diapers. The heir everyone feared was singing lullabies off-key at 3 a.m. And somehow, impossibly, Davina's heart was beginning to forget why it should stay closed. On a Thursday morning, she found him in the kitchen making breakfast. Jiho, strapped to his chest in a carrier. The baby's caramel skin stark against Joon-woo's black t-shirt. He looked up when she entered with Minseo and smiled. The real smile that crinkled his eyes, not the cold, dangerous one he showed the world. "Good morning," he said, and the domesticity of it, the normalcy, terrified her more than any threat ever had, because this was the danger her therapist had warned her about, getting comfortable, forgetting what he was, what he'd done, letting herself believe this could be real. But when he crossed the kitchen and kissed her forehead, then Minseo's, with such careful tenderness, she let herself pretend for one more day. That afternoon, everything changed. Joon-woo was in his study on a conference call, both twins napping, when Davina's phone buzzed with a news alert. Her blood turned to ice as she read the headline, "Seo Tae-young escapes police custody, 3 officers dead." The article detailed how Joon-woo's uncle had orchestrated a violent breakout using corrupt officials on his payroll, disappearing into Seoul's underground within hours. Davina's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. She ran to Joon-woo's study without knocking. The news alert thrust toward him before he could end his call. His face went from confused to absolutely volcanic in the space of a heartbeat. He ended the call mid-sentence, already pulling up security footage on his computer, already making calls in rapid Korean that sounded like orders being issued to an army. Victor, his head of security, who'd barely recovered from the previous attack, appeared within minutes. The penthouse transformed into a war room within an hour. Men in tactical gear, weapons visible, stationed at every entrance. Joon-woo stood at the window overlooking Seoul, jaw clenched, and Davina saw the terrible calculation in his eyes. "We're not safe here," he said finally, not looking at her. "He knows where we are, what our routines are, how to get to the twins. We leave tonight." By midnight, they were in a convoy, heading out of Seoul, the twins bundled in car seats between them, sleeping through the chaos that was upending their lives again. Joon-woo wouldn't tell her where they were going, just that it was secure, remote, somewhere Tae-yang's reach couldn't extend. Davina watched the city. Lights disappear behind them and wondered if she'd ever stop running, if her children would ever know peace, if the violence that conceived them would follow them forever. Joon-woo's hand found hers in the darkness between car seats, squeezed once and she squeezed back, because whatever else he was, right now he was the only thing standing between her babies and his uncle's ambition. The estate was 3 hours north, nestled in mountains Davina didn't recognize, surrounded by forest and walls and enough security to guard a head of state. The main house was traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern luxury, beautiful and isolated and exactly like the cage she'd escaped months ago. But this time, she had her children, and this time, Joon-woo looked at her like she mattered beyond her usefulness. And this time, when he said, "I'll keep you safe," she almost believed him. They settled the twins in a nursery that had been prepared with frightening efficiency, as if Joon-woo had always had this contingency plan, and fell into an exhausted sleep in the master bedroom with both babies and bassinets beside them, too afraid to let them out of sight. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a strange domestic rhythm. Joon-woo worked remotely, managing his business empire from a home office, while Davina cared for the twins and tried not to think about the armed guards patrolling the perimeter. They cooked together in the evenings, simple meals that Joon-woo burned more often than not, making her laugh despite everything. They took turns with night feedings, passing each other in the hallway like ships in the dark, exhausted and covered in spit-up, and somehow more intimate than any romance novel had prepared her for. And slowly, carefully, they began to talk about things that mattered. He told her about his mother's kindness, how she'd tried to shield him from his father's cruelty, how watching her die had broken something fundamental in him. She told him about growing up without a father, about becoming a nurse to help people the way no one had helped her family, about the night he'd taken all of that away, and how she was trying to forgive him without forgetting. One evening, after the twins were asleep, they sat on the bedroom balcony overlooking dark mountains, sharing a bottle of wine that Davina was finally allowed to drink again. The air was cold and clean, so different from Seoul's pollution. Joon-woo looked at her with something raw in his expression and said, "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm grateful for every day you let me try to earn it." And Davina, wine-warm and exhausted and so tired of carrying hate, leaned over and kissed him. Not a desperate kiss, not a passionate one, just a quiet acknowledgement that something had shifted between them, that maybe healing didn't require forgetting, just choosing to move forward despite the past. He kissed her back with a gentleness that made her want to cry, his hand cupping her face like she was something precious. And when he pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "Can I make love to you?" he whispered. "Really make love to you, the way I should have the first time." And she said yes, because her body was hers again, and this time she was choosing. They made love slowly in the master bedroom, moonlight through windows, and it was nothing like that first terrible night. He touched her like she might break, kissed every scar his violence had left, and when she cried halfway through, he stopped immediately until she told him these were different tears, healing tears, the kind that meant she was taking herself back. Afterward, they lay tangled together, his hand on her still soft belly, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, and Davina thought maybe, just maybe, they could survive this. Maybe love could grow in the wreckage. Maybe monsters could become men. She should have known peace never lasted in their world. The next morning, a knock on the estate's front door shattered their fragile sanctuary. Joon-woo answered it with Victor flanking him, hand near his weapon, and found a woman Davina had never seen before. She was stunning in the way Korean actresses were stunning. Perfect porcelain skin, designer clothes, an elegance that made Davina suddenly aware of her nursing-stained shirt and unwashed hair. The woman's eyes went wide when she saw Joon-woo, and she said his name like a prayer, like a curse, like something between both. "Joon-woo, it's me. It's Minji." Davina watched from the top of the stairs, Ji-ho sleeping in her arms, as understanding dawned on Joon-woo's face. "Minji," he breathed, "what are you doing here? How did you find this place?" The woman, Minji, stepped into the foyer without invitation, her eyes taking in the house, the security, finally landing on Davina with an expression that was pure calculation wrapped in fake sympathy. "I heard about the attack," she said, her English perfect and accented. "I've been trying to reach you for months, Joon-woo. We need to talk. About the baby. The baby I'm carrying. Your baby. If you're feeling the intensity of this story and need to know what happens next, hit that like button and subscribe to Afro-Korean World right now. Your support helps this channel bring you more addictive stories like this. The silence that followed was suffocating. Davina felt the floor tilt under her feet, her grip on Ji-ho tightening instinctively. Joon-woo's face had gone absolutely white, his eyes darting between Minji and Davina, clearly doing mental math, trying to figure out if the timeline worked. Minji pressed her advantage, pulling ultrasound images from her designer purse, her hand dramatically on her flat stomach. "I'm 12 weeks along," she said. "From that night 3 months ago, remember? The charity gala. Before your mother passed. Before you disappeared and stopped returning my calls. Our families had an agreement, Joon-woo. We were supposed to be married. And now I'm carrying your heir. Davina couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the rushing in her ears. 3 months ago was exactly when Joon-woo had assaulted her, when he'd been drowning in grief and alcohol. Had there been someone before her that same night, another woman he'd been with, making her even less special, less unique, just another body in his path of destruction? She felt nauseous, betrayed in a way that made no logical sense because what claim did she have on him, really, beyond 2 children and a few weeks of pretending they could be something other than victim and abuser? But looking at this perfect woman claiming to carry his child, Davina felt every insecurity she'd ever had come roaring back. She turned and walked back to the nursery before anyone could see her cry. Joon-woo found her 30 minutes later, pacing the nursery with Ji-ho, Min-seo starting to fuss in her bassinet. The look on his face was tortured, desperate. "Davina, please listen to me," he started, but she cut him off. "Is it possible?" she asked flatly. "Could she be telling the truth? Is there any chance you slept with her that night?" He hesitated, and that hesitation was all the answer she needed. "I don't remember," he admitted, running his hands through his hair. "The gala was the night before my mother died. I was drinking heavily. I was with Min-ji at some point. Our families had arranged an engagement I was trying to get out of. But I can't remember if she and I ever." He stopped, seeing her expression. "Davina, you have to believe me. If she's pregnant, it's not, I wouldn't have." But he couldn't finish the sentence because they both knew he would have. He could have. He'd certainly been capable of it given what he'd done to Davina hours later. She felt something vital crack inside her chest. "Get out," she said quietly. "Take your ex-fiancée, figure out if her baby is yours, and get out of this room. I need to be alone with my children." Not our children in that moment, pointedly. And she saw the words hit him like physical blows. He opened his mouth to argue, thought better of it, and left, closing the door so gently it was worse than if he'd slammed it. The next 3 days were a special kind of hell. Min-ji installed herself in a guest room with the confidence of someone who knew she belonged there, playing the wronged fiancé with Oscar-worthy skill. She was solicitous to Davina, offering to help with the twins with a fake kindness that made Davina want to scream. She cooked traditional Korean meals that Joon-woo ate mechanically. She spoke to him in rapid Korean that excluded Davina completely. She touched his arm and laughed at his non-jokes and reminded him of their shared history, their family connections, all the ways she fit into his world that Davina never would. And Davina watched it all while feeding babies and changing diapers and feeling like the help again, invisible and insignificant, and wondering why she'd ever thought she could be anything else. On the 4th day, Ji-ho stopped eating. At first, Davina thought he was just fussy, but when he refused bottle after bottle, when his temperature spiked and his breathing became labored, terror replaced heartbreak. She ran to find Joon-woo, Ji-ho burning up in her arms, and all the tension between them evaporated in the face of their son's distress. They rushed him to the nearest hospital, 45 minutes of winding mountain roads with Joon-woo driving like a man possessed, and Davina in the back seat trying to keep Ji-ho conscious. The doctors took him immediately, ran tests, while Davina and Joon-woo clutched each other in the waiting room, and came back hours later with expressions that made Davina's heart stop. "Your son has a rare genetic condition," the doctor explained in careful English. "A metabolic disorder that requires specialized treatment. It's manageable, but he'll need specific medication, dietary restrictions, regular monitoring. The best pediatric specialist for this condition is in Switzerland. We can manage the immediate crisis here, but for long-term care, you should consider traveling to Zurich for consultation." The words washed over Davina in a wave of medical jargon she understood too well from her nursing training. And all she could think was that her baby was sick. Her perfect, beautiful boy was sick. And it was somehow cosmically unfair after everything they'd already survived. Joon-woo, to his credit, didn't hesitate. Schedule the consultation in Switzerland, he told the doctor. Money is no object. Time is no object. We'll do whatever he needs. And then he turned to Davina, pulled her into his arms, and broke down completely. I can't lose him, he sobbed into her hair. I can't lose any of you. I just found you. I just started to figure out how to be what you need. And I can't. I can't do this. She held him while he shattered, this powerful, dangerous man reduced to a terrified father, and felt something shift back into place between them. Because this was real. This fear for their child, this desperate love that transcended everything else. Minji and her pregnancy claims seemed distant and irrelevant compared to Jiho's tiny body hooked to monitors, fighting an invisible enemy in his blood. They stayed at the hospital for a week while Jiho stabilized on medication. Minseo remained at the estate with hired nurses, and Davina hated being separated from her daughter but couldn't leave her son. Joon-woo never left either, sleeping in a chair beside Jiho's hospital crib, making calls to arrange the Switzerland trip, and in their exhausted vigil, they found their way back to each other. He told her about his own childhood illnesses, how his mother had sat beside his bed for days when he had pneumonia at 8, how his father had called it weakness. She told him about losing patience despite doing everything right, how nursing had taught her that love sometimes meant fighting for someone who might not survive. And they made silent promises to their sleeping son that whatever happened, wherever this condition took them, they'd face it together. Minji showed up at the hospital on day 5, looking perfectly composed and sympathetic, and Davina wanted to throw something at her beautiful face. I heard about Jiho, she said to Joon-woo, ignoring Davina completely. I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can do to help. Joon-woo looked at her with an expression Davina couldn't read and said, Actually, there is. I need you to take a paternity test. Minji's perfect composure cracked just slightly. What? She breathed. You heard me, Joon-woo continued, his voice cold and controlled. If you're carrying my child, prove it. We'll do a non-invasive prenatal paternity test. Completely safe for the baby. Results in a week. If the child is mine, we'll discuss what that means. If it's not, you leave and never contact me again. Minji's face went through a fascinating array of emotions, shock, anger, calculation, fear, before settling on wounded dignity. How dare you question me, she started, but Joon-woo cut her off. I dare because I've been manipulated by my family my entire life, and I'm done playing games. Test or leave, those are your options. Minji looked between him and Davina, seemed to realize she'd lost this round, and agreed with fake grace. Of course, she purred. I understand you're under stress. We'll do the test, and you'll see I'm telling the truth. But Davina saw the fear in her eyes, and knew with absolute certainty that this woman was lying. The test results came back 6 days later, while they were preparing for the trip to Switzerland with Jiho. Joon-woo opened the email on his phone, read it twice, and then looked at Minji with an expression of pure contempt. 0% probability of paternity, he said flatly. The child you're carrying, if you're even pregnant at all, is not mine. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. And if you ever come near my family again, I will destroy everything you love. Minji tried to protest, to claim the test was wrong, to somehow salvage the situation, but Victor was already escorting her out, her designer luggage being thrown into a car, her perfect facade crumbling as she realized her plan had failed. After she was gone, Joon-woo pulled Davina into his arms and whispered, I'm sorry. I'm sorry she came here. I'm sorry I couldn't remember that night clearly enough to call her a liar immediately. I'm sorry for every moment you doubted whether you mattered to me. You are the only woman I want. You are the only family I need. And Davina, exhausted and emotionally wrung out and still terrified for Jiho, let herself believe him. They flew to Switzerland the next day. Jiho stable enough to travel with medical escorts. Minseo carried by Davina, and for one brief moment on the plane, She let herself imagine a future where they were just a normal family dealing with a manageable medical condition. No assassinations, attempts, no vengeful uncles, no complicated past between them, just parents loving their children. The specialist in Zurich was brilliant and reassuring, confirming the diagnosis and prescribing a treatment plan that would let Ji-ho live a normal life with some accommodations. They spent 2 weeks in Switzerland, staying in a luxurious hotel, seeing doctors, and somehow falling into domesticity in a foreign country. They took walks along Lake Zurich with the twins in a stroller, visited Christmas markets even though it was only November, and existed in a bubble where they could pretend they were anyone else. One evening, after the twins were asleep and they were drinking wine on their hotel balcony overlooking the city, Joon-woo took her hand and said, "Marry me. Really marry me. Not because of the contract or the inheritance or because we have children together, but because I love you. Because you've made me want to be the man my mother hoped I'd become. Because I can't imagine my life without you in it." Davina looked at him, this complicated man who destroyed and rebuilt her, and felt the answer in her bones. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said softly. "After we're back in Seoul and dealing with real life and Taeyang is dealt with. Ask me when you've proven this isn't just gratitude or crisis bonding or guilt. Ask me when I'm sure this is real." He nodded, disappointment and understanding mixing in his expression. "I can wait," he said. "I'll wait as long as you need." And then he kissed her, sweet and desperate, and she let herself fall a little more in love with the man he was becoming. They returned to Seoul after 3 weeks, moving back into the penthouse with upgraded security and plans to restart their lives. Ji-ho was thriving on his new treatment. Min-seo was hitting developmental milestones, and for one blessed month, nothing terrible happened. Davina started to relax, to believe they might actually be safe, to plan for a future that extended beyond crisis management. She should have known better. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Joon-woo's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize, and when he answered, Tae-young's voice filled the speaker. "Hello, nephew." "Miss me." Joon-woo's face went absolutely white. "Where are you?" he demanded, but Tae-young just laughed. "Somewhere you'll never find me," he said, "but I wanted you to know I've been watching. Such a lovely family you've built, such beautiful children. It would be a shame if anything happened to them." Joon-woo's hand tightened on the phone. "If you touch them, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth." Another laugh. "I don't need to touch them," Tae-yang said. "I just need to destroy their father. Tell me, nephew, does your lovely nurse know what you've been lying to her? Does she know about the cameras?" Davina's blood ran cold. "What cameras?" she whispered. But she already knew, some part of her had always known, that the night that destroyed her life had been witnessed, recorded, made permanent. Tae-young continued, oblivious or uncaring of her horror. "I have security footage from that night, very thorough footage, showing exactly what my nephew did to his mother's pretty nurse. Quite brutal, really. I'm sure the media would be fascinated. The public loves a scandal, especially when it involves Seoul's most eligible bachelor raping the help." "Release the tape," Joon-woo said, his voice deadly calm, "and I'll kill you myself." "Oh, I'm not going to release it," Tae-young purred. "Not if you give me what I want. Transfer 70% of your assets to my control. Give me voting rights in all your companies, and most importantly, give me guardianship of those beautiful twins. They're CO heirs, after all. They belong to the family." The line went dead. Davina and Joon-woo stared at each other in the following silence, the weight of the threat hanging between them. He would destroy both of them, use Davina's trauma as a weapon, take their children, and there was nothing they could do to stop him because the evidence of Joon-woo's crime existed, was probably already backed up in multiple locations, waiting to destroy their lives. Unless, Davina heard herself say, her voice stronger than she felt, unless we release it first. Both Joon-woo and Victor, who'd been listening from the corner, stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "What?" Joon-woo breathed. "You want to release the tape yourself." Davina stood, pacing, her mind working through the angles. If Tae-yang releases it, she said, we're victims of his blackmail, defensive, trying to hide. But if I release it, if I go public with my story on my terms, then I control the narrative. I'm not a scandal, I'm a survivor. You're not a criminal hiding evidence. You're a man who's taken responsibility, who's building a life with the woman you hurt, who's trying to be better. Joon-woo looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Davina, that tape shows. It's evidence of the worst thing I've ever done. Releasing it would destroy me. It might destroy you too. She met his eyes steadily. Then we faced that together. I'm tired of being ashamed of what you did to me. I'm tired of letting fear control my choices. Tae-yang thinks he can use my trauma as a weapon. But what if I turn it into armor instead? What if I tell the world exactly what happened, how I survived, how we're trying to build something better from the wreckage? Maybe I lose everything. Maybe we both do. But at least it's on our terms. And at least Tae-yang loses his leverage. The plan came together over the next week with the help of a crisis PR team and lawyers who cost more than Davina's yearly nursing salary. She would do an exclusive interview with a respected journalist, tell her story completely, show the tape if necessary to prove she wasn't lying, and explain the complicated relationship she'd built with Joon-woo afterward. The twins would be kept private, their faces never shown, but their existence acknowledged. Joon-woo would release a statement admitting what he'd done, the steps he'd taken to make amends, his commitment to being better. It was a massive risk that could blow up in their faces, end Joon-woo's business empire, destroy Davina's credibility, turn them both into tabloid fodder. But it was also the only way to take control of their own story before Tae-yang weaponized it. The night before the interview was scheduled to air, Davina stood in the bathroom staring at herself in the mirror, wondering if she was making a catastrophic mistake. Joon-woo found her there, wrapped his arms around her from behind, met her eyes in their reflection. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. I can give Tae-yang what he wants. We can disappear with the twins, start over somewhere he can't find us. She leaned back against him, and spend the rest of our lives running, looking over our shoulders, teaching our children that power wins and victims stay silent. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not letting Tae-yang or anyone else make me small ever again. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You're the strongest person I've ever met, he whispered. And whatever happens tomorrow, I'm with you. The interview aired on a Friday evening, and Seoul exploded. Davina's face was on every news channel, her story dissected by experts and armchair psychologists, the tape analyzed frame by people who had no right to her trauma. The response was complicated. Some people called her brave, a survivor, an inspiration. Others questioned why she'd stayed with her rapist, suggested she was lying for money, accused her of manipulating a grieving man. Joon-woo's business partners abandoned him in droves. Stock prices plummeted. Protesters gathered outside their building, demanding his arrest. But just as many people sent messages of support, shared their own stories of survival, praised Davina for refusing to be shamed. The narrative was messy and painful and public in a way that made her want to hide, but it was theirs. And Tae-yang couldn't use it against them anymore. 3 days after the interview aired, Davina started feeling nauseous. At first, she blamed stress, but when the nausea continued every morning for a week, a terrible suspicion took root. She bought a pregnancy test, locked herself in the bathroom, and watched 2 pink lines appear with a sense of déjà vu that was almost funny. She was pregnant again. 2 months after giving birth to twins, still nursing, her body barely recovered. She was pregnant with Joon-woo's child again. But this time, this baby was different. This baby was conceived in love, in healing, in a moment of genuine connection. This baby was proof that something beautiful could grow from the wreckage after all. She told Joon-woo that evening, just handed him the test while he was reviewing legal documents. He stared at it for a full minute, his expression cycling through shock, fear, wonder, joy. "We're having another baby," he said, like he needed to hear it. Allowed to believe it. Davina nodded, tears in her eyes. "This one's different," she whispered. "This one we chose." He pulled her into his arms, held her like she was something precious and breakable, and she felt his tears in her hair. "I love you," he said. "I know I don't deserve to say it, I know I've done nothing to earn it, but I love you so much it terrifies me." And she said it back, finally, the words she'd been too afraid to speak. "I love you too. God help me, but I love you too." If this story is gripping you, and you want to see what happens next, smash that like button and subscribe to Afro-Korean World. Trust me, you don't want to miss episode 3. They had 2 weeks of fragile happiness, processing the new pregnancy, dealing with the media fallout, rebuilding their lives piece by piece. Ji-ho continued to thrive on his treatment. Min-seo was babbling and reaching for toys, and Davina let herself imagine a future with 3 children, a partner who was genuinely trying to be better, a life that wasn't defined by trauma. She should have known the universe wasn't done with them yet. The knock came on a Sunday evening. Victor answered the door with his hand on his weapon and found a man Davina had never seen before. He was old, maybe 70, with the kind of face that had probably been handsome once, but was now weathered by violence and time. He wore an expensive suit, carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. And when he spoke, his voice had the same timbre as Joon-woo's. "Hello, son," he said. "Did you miss me?" Joon-woo, who'd been playing with the twins on the living room floor, stood so fast he nearly knocked over Min-seo. His face had gone absolutely bloodless. "You're dead," he whispered. "I watched you die 10 years ago." The old man smiled, and it was the coldest expression Davina had ever seen. "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated," he said, stepping into the penthouse like he owned it. "I've been in hiding, building my own empire, waiting for the right moment to return. And now seems perfect. My grandchildren are beautiful, by the way. The boy has the CO eyes." Joon-woo moved between his father and the twins instinctively, and Davina scooped up both babies, backing toward the nursery. Victor had his weapon drawn, but seemed unsure whether to shoot, probably because this man was technically still family, still legally alive if he'd faked his death. Joon-woo's father, his name was Seo Kang-dae, looked around the penthouse with proprietorial satisfaction. "You've done well with my empire," he said to Joon-woo. "Better than I expected, honestly. Your mother made you soft, but you still have my ruthlessness underneath. Now it's time to stop playing house with your trauma toy and remember who you really are." The casual cruelty of reducing Davina to a toy snapped something in Joon-woo. "Get out," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You're not welcome here. You have no claim to any of this. And if you ever speak about her that way, again I will put you in the ground for real this time." Kang-dae laughed. "There's my boy," he said with satisfaction. "That rage, that violence, that's Seo blood. But you're still playing at being civilized, still pretending you can be something other than what I made you. Let me help you remember." He pulled out a phone, showed them a video of Tai Yang bound and gagged in what looked like a warehouse. "I found your troublesome uncle," he said conversationally. "Dealt with him for you. You're welcome. Now, let's discuss the twins' education. The boy will start training with me when he turns 3. The girl can stay with her mother. She's useless for business anyway." Davina felt something primal and protective rise in her chest. "You're not touching my children," she said, her voice deadly calm despite her racing heart. Kang-dae looked at her for the first time, really looked at her, and his expression was pure contempt mixed with something calculating. "The nurse," he said, "the one who survived my son's attention. You're stronger than you look, I'll give you that, but you're also carrying his 3rd child, according to my sources. That baby belongs to the Seo family. They all do. You're just the vessel." What happened next occurred in slow motion. Joon-woo lunged at his father with murder in his eyes. Kang-dae pulled a gun from his jacket. Victor moved to intercept, and Davina, holding both twins, screamed. The sound that came from her mouth was primal, protective. The sound of a mother who would burn the world down to keep her children safe. The gun swung toward her, and Davina saw her death in Kang Dae's cold eyes, saw him calculating whether killing her would hurt Joon-woo enough to make him compliant, saw the exact moment he decided she was expendable. Time seemed to stop. The twins were crying. Joon-woo was shouting. Victor was moving but too slow, and Kang Dae's finger tightened on the trigger.